If you're a fan of historical pianos, you may have seen my videos about me finding an 1850 Erard Grand Piano under stacks of dusty furniture in a local junk shop about a year ago, early 2024, and how, considering everything, it was in pretty good shape. And then I made a video about how, through the expertise of one Giorgio Paolucci, I was able to have it in good playing condition in just 3 mornings of his work. Well, recently, as I was surfing the internet, looking for more information on my beautiful Erard, my wife says I've become a little obsessed. By the way, did you see the opening, a calligraphic fantasy on the Erard logo? It took me hours to do. I had to Photoshop over 100 photographs, but it was a labor of love. Maybe I am becoming a little obsessed. A little. Anyway, as I was starting to say, it was one day while I was burrowing into internet Erardiana, as I like to call it, coming across fascinating videos like Tom Beghin's lecture on Beethoven's 1803 Erard Piano, finishing with him playing the Grand Piano Sonata that Beethoven specifically wrote for this piano, and him playing it on a wondrously, meticulously made replica of Beethoven's 1803 piano. It's spine-tingling. You have to check it out. Or the fun classical pianist Tiffany Poon playing Wagner's 1858 Erard in the Wagner Museum in Lucerne in Switzerland. Or Naruhiko Kawaguchi's very sensitive comparison between an 1857 Erard and an 1860 Pleyel. It's wonderful, and he plays beautifully. Well, I was happily lost down this rabbit hole, and then I came across the website of the Musée de la Musique de Paris, the Paris Music Museum. And little had I realized that the entire collection of the original company records of the Erard Piano Company from the 1700s and the 1800s still exist, and that they are in this museum. And what's really exciting is that you can actually consult photographic replicas of these books online. There are 2 kinds of books. There are factory records from the factory where they made the pianos, and there are records from the sales office where they sold them. You can actually leaf through these records, search through them, page by page. The marvels of internet. So I started clicking and leafing, and I first clicked open the list of volumes to find the volume that I was interested in. The one holding the factory production records for 1847 to 1850. You may remember that my piano has the date 1850 written on the action, and that there's the serial number 21753 stamped in various places. I think I was holding my breath as I flipped through the pages, getting closer and closer to the serial number 21753. And then I came to it. There it was. I sat in front of my computer, stunned. So let's take a closer look at this entry for my piano. First of all, we see on the left side that there are 5 column headings: Observation, Atelier, Genre, Numéro, and Entrée. That's observations, workshop, type, number, and entry. At the very top of the page, under Observation, we read 1850, Février 20. That's February the 20th, 1850. I find this a bit strange to put a date in a generic observations column, but I see on the other pages it's always a date and never any other sort of observation. Strange. Is it perhaps the date that they started to build the piano? The next column under Atelier, which means workshop, is blank. But looking through the ledger, you see that entries for the workshops often span more than 1 page. And looking back 2 pages from my piano's entry, the last workshop entered was the Dubois atelier. There seem to have been no less than 6 different workshops working in the Erard factory at this time. Despierre, Chapard, Van der Veld, Leroy, Cercy, and our Dubois. But this is interesting. I note that there are no less than 26 pianos with the date February 20th in the observations column, and that all of them are indicated for this Dubois atelier. Does that mean that the Dubois workshop started to build 26 pianos at once? How big would the workshop have to be? I mean, how many people were working in this one workshop? Did Dubois have one team making 26 piano lids, another team crafting piano legs, another team making piano keyboards? But if we look at the math of the piano serial numbers, we see the Erard company was at this time manufacturing about 1,000 pianos a year. Can you believe that? 1,000 top quality pianos a year. That's about 3 a day. That's a hell of a lot of pianos. Think of the organization you'd need for it to all run smoothly. Think of how many qualified craftsmen you'd need to turn out such a quantity of quality instruments at such a rhythm. I can imagine this bustling Dubois workshop buzzing away, crammed with workers, carpenters working at lathes, turning piano legs, and other workers sanding soundboards. You can almost hear them, can't you? And other workers making the intricate hammer and damper action and the patented Erard fast repetition mechanism, probably in another room away from the dust. Workers gluing ivory and ebony to wooden slats for the piano keys. And I imagine there'd be the sound of workers stringing the 250 strings you need for each piano. And there'd be piano tuners working non-stop. The air would be full of the smell of glue and wood polish. But if this scene is not amazing enough, according to this factory ledger, this same Dubois workshop starts another 6 pianos 3 weeks later, and then yet another 18 pianos a week after that. This is the Industrial Revolution going full blast. I would love to know more about how they organized piano making in 1850. But this still doesn't clarify who our Monsieur Scayen was, the man who signed his name to the action on my piano beside the 1850 date. Perhaps he was the highly specialized foreman of the team that was making the so critical piano action. Then we come to genre or type, and here we can make out piano à queue, piano with a tail, or grand piano. It's normally written in 3 words, piano à queue, but I guess in the factory shorthand they just scribbled it as one word to save time. And then the man has written PT Mod with a little squiggle. But judging from other entries, this is short for Petit Modèle, or the small model. And in fact, my piano is 2 meters 5 centimeters long, or 6 feet 8 inches. Then the clerk has written what seems to be Ou la palissandre. Palissandre is, according to my well-thumbed Petit Robert French dictionary, an exotic odoriferous wood of a purplish colour nuanced with black and yellow. A purplish colour? I wouldn't say my piano is purplish. Maybe in a certain light? In my ignorance, I had actually thought that the wood of my piano was mahogany. So this is a revelation. Internet tells me that palissandre wood is commonly known as rosewood and comes from various species in the genus Dalbergia, whatever that is. It is valued for its rich colour, durability and the ability to take a high polish, making it popular for furniture and musical instruments. But there's a mystery here. I don't understand the O la before the word palissandre. It looks innocently enough like two ordinary French words, even though O la isn't grammatically correct. And there's the fact that the French word palissandre is masculine, so the la doesn't fit in at all. It must stand for something else. Looking at the previous entries, the la might be interpreted as a ha, H-A, but I still don't know what that would mean. I've compared it to other entries and it seems to be a description of its own, independent of the wood type. The numéro is of course the serial number, 21,753, that's easy. And then there's entrée. The entry is Juillet 1850, July 1850. It sounds obvious enough, but what does entry mean specifically? Considering the observation column said February the 20th, perhaps this is the entry into the Erard sales room? Then if we go to the other side of the ledger, we see there are 3 columns, sortie, acquéreur and professeur. The sortie column seems simple enough. This will be the date the piano left the showroom. In my case, January the 31st, 1851. Acquéreur would mean the buyer. My old heart beats faster when I see the name of the man who actually bought my piano. It was a Monsieur Pucci in Rome, Signor Pucci. I never imagined that I would be able to discover the name of the first buyer. And the fact that Signor Pucci lives in Rome explains how the piano ended up in a junk shop 80 kilometers away, 50 miles away, 175 years away. I see from other entries that this was not the first piano Signor Pucci had bought from Erard, nor was it the last. So he was probably a dealer and not a private person. And you see that his first name was Paolo Pucci. Seeing this name is like travelling in time, like looking down a wormhole in time. I've tried to track him down on the internet, but haven't come up with anything yet. So if anybody out there knows anything about a Paolo Pucci, a piano dealer in Rome in 1850, please let me know. The last column with the heading Professor, is also a bit mystifying. It's mainly left blank in the records, but perhaps it points to piano teachers who refer customers to the Erard Company? I don't know. But now we know something more about this venerable piano. But we haven't finished. Let's go now to the sales ledgers. And since we know that the piano left the showroom on January the 31st, 1851, we take down, figuratively speaking, the ledger for 1849-1851. And indeed, here we are. At the bottom of this page, we again see our Monsieur Pucci. And here again we see P. à queue, and the petit modèle, and this strange Ola or Oha, and palisse for palissandre. And then we see a new term, affilité, which I suspect refers to the lines of brass that decorate the piano cabinet. I've seen it called brass stringing inlay. And look, the price was 3,700 francs, with a rabais, a discount of 1,700 francs. That's a big discount. That's over 45%. And it makes the final price 2,000 francs. And that's the most expensive piano on the page. I'm rather proud of that in my childish way. There's something written in the margin that I can't decipher. Perhaps somebody can tell me what it says? I think it's something to do with the delivery. Similar things are written in the margin elsewhere. On the opposite page is written his name with something that looks like the entry was carried over to some other ledger. Some accounting reference, probably. Now we know exactly when my piano was made, the kind of wood it is made of, and the name of the workshop who made it, and even the name of the man who oversaw the piano action. And we know who bought it and for how much, and where he lived. The piano was made by Erard, by the Dubois workshop, between February the 20th and July 1850. And it left the warehouse on January the 31st, 1851, on its way to Rome, to a Mr. Paolo Pucci, who bought it for 2,000 francs. This is what they call, in the antiques business, provenance, with a capital P. If we're still a little bit curious, we can turn the page just to see what's going on the next page. Shall we do that? Well, we come across another entry for a piano exactly like mine. But this was sold to the director of the comic opera in Paris, no less, a Monsieur Perrin. And he paid 400 francs more for his. Isn't this exciting? You could spend all day looking through these records. And look, this Monsieur Perrin is even in Wikipedia. You see that Wagner apparently called him a well-to-do, a bel esprit and painter. And that this Perrin loathed Bizet's opera Carmen. He later became director of the Paris Opera and the Comédie Française. Quite a man. We can imagine him playing on the twin of my piano in the evening in his salon, surrounded by opera singers and the crème de la crème of Paris society. Perhaps even Liszt walks in and plays something. My Erard piano starts to come alive. And hey, we have to give a shout out for Wikipedia, don't we? One of the most trusted sources of information we have, and no adverts. I should tell you that I had understood that the use of the photos of the archives was in some way protected. And so when I wanted to use them for this video, I felt obliged to reach out to the Musée de la Musique de Paris to ask for permission. And you can believe that I was most pleasantly surprised when I almost immediately got back an email from no less a person than the founder of the Erard Centre himself, Monsieur Alain Roudier. And he, in fact, explained that it wasn't necessary to have permission as these documents were now in the public domain. But I have to say this was a lucky misunderstanding on my part, because I have been in correspondence with him since, which has been a privilege. On his website, Alain Roudier hints at the recent turbulent history of the archives. He says in the early 1990s, he made the discovery of the precious and sought-after Erard Pleyel archives, saving them from certain destruction. He will be the guardian of these archives for 30 years and will be the first to make an inventory of the 12,000 objects constituting them: letters, paintings, account books, and instruments. Fascinating stuff. I'm sure there's a story behind all that, waiting to be told. Alain Roudier has in fact written and co-authored several books about the Erards and edited 3 fascinating volumes of letters between Pierre and Sebastian Erard. Pierre, the young nephew, was running the Erard Company in London, making harps with special patented foot pedals. And he was writing to his uncle in Paris. I have now had the privilege of reading these 3 volumes, and fascinating they indeed are. Alain Roudier is a very interesting man. Besides being a pianist and an organologist, besides giving master classes in playing period keyboard instruments, and besides even designing a new concert piano for Pleyel, think of that. He leads the Association Le Temps Retrouvé in Avignon in the south of France. The association hosts a music museum and a program of special concerts. And just think that one of the jewels in his collection of early pianos is an Erard piano from the 1790s. I hope to treat myself to a visit to Avignon in the near future. So I wish to give hearty thanks to Monsieur Roudier, to the Erard Centre and to the Paris Music Museum for the use of these historic records. They have meant a lot to me. Merci. Merci. Summing up, the musical scholar and historical piano expert Ji Young Kim has said the Erard Archives own the distinction of being the most comprehensive record of a musical instrument building firm anywhere from any time. That's quite some praise. But I really wonder how many other treasures are captured in these ledgers. When you think some clerk on a high stool had dipped his goose quill pen into an ink pot and written this entry for my piano, and then probably blotted it with an ink blotter, straight out of Charles Dickens, or perhaps I should say Victor Hugo. I can easily picture this because I'm so old, I have to tell you that when I started school in the early 1950s in England, we all used straight pens with nibs, and all our desks had inkwells. And when I was learning to write joined-up writing, as we called it, my fingers were always stained with ink, and my notebook was full of blots. I remember it well. I suppose soon kids won't even bother learning to write anymore. I suppose the subject will be phone typing or thumb typing. But perhaps I'm just being a grumpy old man. Forgive me. You know, I've been reading a lot about the mid-19th century, about the world the Erard Piano Company operated in when they built my piano in 1850. And if you can believe it, the Dubois workshop in these years was calmly working away, making pianos while revolutions were bloodying the streets of Paris. And this piano of mine arrived in the city of Rome only months after a revolution there, where no less a person than the famous Garibaldi had ended up defending a doomed Roman Republic against the French. France had sent troops to Rome to fight Garibaldi and to defend the Pope. Think of it, when this piano was being unpacked by Signor Paolo Pucci and his staff, the walls of Rome still had fresh, gaping holes in them made by French cannonballs. And people who had fought and were wounded in the revolution were probably still walking past his piano shop in the cobbled street on crutches. And the city was still occupied by French troops. And yet our Signor Paolo Pucci calmly orders an expensive French piano from Paris. If only my piano could talk. Well, as I'm sure you can imagine, I've unearthed other exciting Erard stories, which I hope to share with you in another video soon. So I'll catch you later. Thanks for watching. That was fascinating, wasn't it? Yeah, fascinating.
Thank you.